In fact, a great struggle was being waged in Bulgaria, not for the unification, as they say, of the Bulgarian tribe, but for the domination of one tribe in Bulgaria. And this struggle is one of the reasons for the liberation of this Bulgarian state itself. This struggle was fought between the Bulgarian tribe and the Slavic tribe of the Balkan Peninsula. The Bulgarian tribe, a cluster, but well organized, came to the Balkan Peninsula and found a tribe peaceful, still undeveloped in its social organization, even when it was in the last stage of barbarism, when it was just forming into confederations of tribes, for to pass further, into the period of civilization, into a nation. And this more organized part, which chiefly stood on a lower barbarous rung, rapaciously cruel, and knowing no abhorrence of any means, fell upon the Slavic tribes to conquer them. But these tribes, despite being unorganized, waged their struggle against this Bulgarian tribe for a long time.
Remember, they were a colony of Byzantium and its subjects.
Submissive but independent in their inner life.
Don't forget the history!
Which history? The one you're faking. We do not recognize such a history. We see what the reality is. It is a fact, gentlemen, that there was a great struggle between the Bulgarian and Slavic tribes on the Balkan Peninsula. And this process, which Yanko Sakazov told us about and which others also support, is not for the unification of the Bulgarian tribe, but for the conquest of the Slavic tribes of the Balkan area, and that is why we see the suppression of the Slavic tribes of the Balkans, who massively resettle in Byzantium and Asia Minor, and on the other hand, went south to Macedonia, in which the Slavic tribe was preserved for a long time.
But you are from Zagorashani.
I am a native of Zagorachani, but I am not a Bulgarian, I am Macedonian, Macedonian Slav. And as such, if you really want to know, I am for Macedonia as a Slavic country which will have its own government.
What are you looking for in Bulgaria then?
Therefore, gentlemen, the process we are talking about is a process for conquest, not for the unification of the Bulgarian tribe. If you stand by the theory that Mr. Sakazov developed for us that day, that is, by the historical past, then we will have to justify the aspirations of the Serbian bourgeoisie, because the Serbian tribe is a pure Slavic tribe without any impurities. As you know, it wants to unite the Slavs in Macedonia. Therefore, if you stand by this theory of the past, you are lost. If you don't want to pay attention to the facts, then others pay attention, your opponents pay attention.
What are the Bulgarians called in your village?
If you ask them, they call themselves Christians.
They call themselves Bulgarians.
I don't want to go into this area, but I want to point out what dangers from your point of view, from the Bulgarian point of view, theories are developing in our history, regarding the process of unification of the Bulgarian tribe.
The struggle for the independence of the Bulgarian church took place mostly in your village, and that's why they burned it down.
This is not the case at all, and the process lies in the conquest of the tribes of the Balkan Peninsula by the Bulgarians. And if we talk about the historical process, then this process still exists today, precisely for the Bulgarian tribe to conquer the places it needs so you will have access to the sea, to the large waterways and the Aegean Sea. This is the meaning of the historical process. I think that there are no more poorly informed and confused heads than you on these issues. Especially you teachers who have always been brought up on these false theories, you cannot understand these things at all. If you are convinced that there are Bulgarians in Dobruja, that there are Bulgarians in Mavro, that there are Bulgarians in Macedonia, that there are Bulgarians in Ser, Drama and Kavala, why are you afraid of this Russian peace formula? If you are convinced that there are Bulgarians somewhere, why are you afraid to hold a referendum and see what they say? Why are you shouting? It means you are not sure, so there is something that worries you, there are some areas conquered by you that, if put to a referendum.
Пример, сега се сещам една реч на Димитър Благоев в 17-та година в парламента, когато той казва: аз не съм българин, всички знаем Димитър Благоев откъде е, от село Загоричане, Костурско. Аз не съм българин, аз съм македонски славянин.
Вижте, има противоречие. Аз ще ви кажа един пример много интересен. Професор Александър Цанков, кървавия професор. Вие знаете, че 1906 година, като студент в Мюнхен, той написва една брошура където пише, че към Македония имат претенции еднакво българи, сърби и гърци. И предлага Македония да излезе от състава на Османската империя и да стане независима държава. Александър Цанков. Тъй, че противоречие между българските политици, между редовете винаги може да откриеме. По-генерално би трябвало да гледаме на нещата.
Добре, обаче.
In this first article, with the title, Scandalous, the grandfather denied that he was Bulgarian. Then the article goes on. Little known is the fact that the father of Bulgarian socialism, Dimitar Blagov, renounced his Bulgarian roots. I am a native of Zagarakani, but I am not Bulgaria, I am a Slav. These are his verbatim words, spoken not anywhere, but in the Bulgarian parliament during the First World War, December 10, 1917. The article is ending with the following statement. The inexplicable internationalism of the Bulgarian socialist obviously has its underpinnings. In fact, the doctrine of the Macedonian nation was being worked hard at that time. It was to become a building block for the later realization of the insane idea of some Balkan federation. Then, we have this article, where they went a step further and made a list of some sort of traitors, I guess, which includes Dimitar Blagov, Sandansky, Georgy Dimitrov, and the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Kirill Petkov, who most probably found himself on this list for lifting the veto. The list of articles goes on. In this one they are bringing him, I quote, before the court of history. I guess being a Macedonian and publicly stating it in Bulgaria is the worst sin of them all. But the paranoia doesn't end there. Some political structures introduced the idea of renaming the city of Blagovgrad. The city was renamed from Gorna Jumaya into Blagovgrad in 1950. One of the first ones who came publicly with this idea was the member of the European Parliament and denier of the Macedonian nation and language Andrei Kovachev. The idea was also supported by the poet Rumen Leonidov, a great-grandson of the revolutionary Leonid Yankov. In the newest article on this subject from early 2023, Blagovgrad is marked as the capital of Macedonianism and Blagov himself as chief apostle of Macedonianism. The hate speech towards Macedonians doesn't end there though. The article goes on. In our millennial history, we have had several capitals. Pliska, Preslav, Ohrid, Tarnovo, and Sofia are at the top of the Bulgarian statehood. However, we have one more. The capital of the traitors, Blagovgrad, with dark symbolism because it bears the name of a national traitor. In 1909, the first Balkan Social Democratic Conference was held in Belgrade. At the High Forum, Blagov proposed the creation of a Balkan Federal Republic. It will also include the Macedonian nation, which does not exist. Therefore, it must be invented. Ultimately, the idea was abandoned, as it seems that the locals of Blagovgrad did not agree with the name of their city being changed again. However, it seems like the damage has already been done, as on multiple occasions his monuments were vandalized, just because he identified as Macedonian, something that even the dead are not forgiven for.